It says I'm live. Hi. Hello. So, the Nine of Cups and Temperance. I'm using the Mystic Mondays. I'm just going to pull a few cards. We're going to see what comes through today. I don't think this will be carried over from the other one, but maybe it will be. The Ten of Wands with the Queen of Cups. I think the Ten of Wands with the Queen of Cups, it speaks to the burden of royalty and the weight of a crown. And a lot of people envy the crown for its luster without knowing the weight of its responsibility. And it's like you can't have it both ways. If you want the power, you have to take on the responsibility. If you want the fame, you got to take on the beast, the paparazzi. So first came out the Six of Cups. What I like about this Six of Cups card is that I was just talking about the on the Legacy channel. I was just talking about, okay, so this is going to carry over through the last one, I guess. The Ace of Spades and the Two of Hearts came out, and it was this Ace of Swords, Two of Cups energy, where something had to be not only seen, but also done to end the separation. Now, with this Six of Cups, we see those two cups like really, like literally touching, like they're right next to each other, but there's also like they're framed by four cups. So it feels like it carries a little bit of an energy of an opportunity that could have passed by on both sides, but it takes both people to step up. Also, there's this light and dark balance on both sides, and it's balanced to the point where these two energies can work together. I want to say energies and not people, but it ended up super like peoply yesterday. The other cards that came out, it's the Fool and the Princess of Swords. Going off of that ace, what's at the bottom? Bottom of the deck is the Two of Cups. Okay. Well, and then we have the Hierophant. Oh, snap. Okay. So I'm loving this energy. I think the Hierophant is behind that Two of Cups because, again, like both individuals have maybe like the light and dark isn't completely balanced, but that conversation is there. I was talking about earlier how, like, some people say that they have issues with like you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else. Some people's like, that's not true because, I couldn't love myself until someone else loved me. But if you're the type of person who's not capable of receiving love from other people or even expressing love to other people, how then is that going to be effective for you in terms of like getting you to love yourself? Some people can accept or give or do both, but not find it within themselves. And if that's the case, you're probably not going to struggle as much as if you were incapable of doing either or both of those things. Why am I talking about this? Where was I going? Because of this balance here. And because of the Hierophant that came out under the Two of Cups. When you're committed to doing it within yourself, that commitment is reflected outwards. Or when you can reflect that commitment to someone else inwards, it puts you in a space of really being able to participate in a healthier relationship, a more consistently healthy relationship as well. And it's not to say that things are easy, but you're in a position where you can handle difficulty. And with the Princess of Swords and the Fool, I think this is us really getting comfortable with not knowing in the situation. With the Princess of Swords being the Page of Swords energy, or the first introduction to the Court of Swords, she is the least experienced, but also her sword is curved. And so it takes on like a scimitar energy, right? If no one else in the house is specialized in curved weaponry, maybe the form will be a little bit different. and the way you use it will be different. So there isn't too much that anyone else in her family could give her that is useful, or that it's at least it's not specialized to her. It can be useful in a generalized sense, like for general sword fighting or for general sword play, these things sort of follow through. But for using this specific brand or this specific style, it may not necessarily benefit her. But I think this fool is her comfortability with living life and discovering through experience how to use it on her own. And that's what I love about these two energies coming together in this. Because the Six of Cups can be a soulmate card, but it can also be a card of, I just lost it. Where'd it go? But again, it's carrying this energy of like one who's balanced within themselves. And because they're balanced within themselves, they can find balance with someone else. And from this space, again, it's like we live life and we discover. Because at the end of the day, experience, like with the sword, experience teaches more than theory. That's why even in Knight Academy, you still have sparring matches. It's more than just reading a book on how to use a sword. Because even if you are the most knowledgeable, without actual experience, your body wouldn't acclimate to the weight. Your body wouldn't know how to like respond to it. There are muscles that have to be trained, muscles that are trained through repeated use, neurological pathways in the brain that are reworked. It's that I think it's neuroplasticity. I think that's the property of neuroplasticity, where it's like the more you do something, your brain can rewire it in a way basically to reduce the length of that circuit. So it fires quicker. Your brain is able to respond faster in the situation. And again, it comes because of practice. This is an energy that's like, I'm ready to practice, I'm ready to try, and like really try. But again, that's a balance that comes from within. And then there's the Ace of Pentacles. That's the whole new world. That's navigating through the world in a new way. Navigating through the world in a way that's less separate from it. And then there's the Prince of Pentacles, which is, it's not yet the crowned, it's not yet the sovereign of that. But the Prince of Pentacles, it has a say, it's not a passive energy. And so it's like, life becomes a conversation that we carry internally and externally through whatever ways we do it. Um, and I talked about earlier with the crocus, dreaming of crocuses signifies happy new beginnings. And it was an energy of like, it's a happiness that is made even the more joyous because of the effort that you put into having it. It's not something that was just given to you. It's like when you eat a meal after a hard day's work, it tastes better. Bottom of the deck is the Knight of Cups, Ace of Wands upright, Two of Swords, Seven of Wands, Queen of Cups, Three of Pentacles. Ace of Wands, Two of Swords. Here's another one too. The Ace of Wands is the idea. The Ace of Wands is the inspiration and the passion. The Two of Swords is the follow through. Two of Swords can be a card of indecision. I'm feeling Two of Swords this time as an energy of moving forward regardless of the situation and circumstances. And if you have to find a way, if you have to be creative to get it done, then you'll do it. This is creative thinking. Something isn't necessarily straightforward here, but where there is a passion and desire and a will and a dedication and determination, it will find its way made manifest. And again, here's that Seven of Wands, sticking to that, like sticking to your guns no matter what. And it's like the world around you won't find victory over you as long as you hang on to that ace, as long as you hang on to whatever this is. And then we end with the Queen of Cups and the Three of Pentacles. I think the Queen of Cups and the Three of Pentacles is speaking to spirit working with you to make this happen. It's the Queen of Cups instead of the High Priestess because you may not necessarily understand fully or know fully how everything is going to like work out. But this is a cooperative energy here. And then with the Prince of Cups at the bottom, it's going to put you in a position, and the Ten of Wands, it's going to put you in a position to, it's almost like you bear the burden before you get the crown. Because it's how I was talking about earlier, how like a lot of people want the crown, but they don't necessarily understand the burden or the weight of the gold, right? I don't think gold is necessarily light. So if you have gold on your head, like solid gold, it'll be a little heavy. Your neck might have to, your neck may develop some muscles just to keep your head from collapsing under the weight of that crown, right? And so with this, it's like, again, it's training, it's conditioning the body to get used to carrying that weight. And it's training and conditioning the body in a way of cooperation with spirit because this is the Prince of Cups. Or not just cooperation with spirit, but it's appearing and it's showing up in the world in a way that takes others and yourself into account. And it can be a burden because sometimes there are things that we don't necessarily want to do that we have to do. And it's coming from a space of like things that we do because we care about somebody else. And we also care about ourselves. This is weighing out learning to accommodate self love and love for others. Because sometimes there are situations and circumstances where it's like, because I love you, this is something that I don't mind doing for you. But because I love myself, this is something that I'm not comfortable with. Because I also have to care for me. And if caring for you means that I can't care for me, then this isn't going to work. And a lot of times we sort of get stuck, or a lot of people will get stuck in situations where they care more for others than they do for themselves. And they do so willingly or not, but it doesn't create a more unilateral happiness. And the Queen of Cups just came back out with the Princess of Swords at the bottom. I think that's saying that eventually logic will catch up to the emotion. It may be a little bit head over heart right now, or heart over head. It may be a little heart over head right now, but that's because you have to relearn things. The old space that you were in doesn't accommodate it doesn't accommodate the new things coming in. And so the way that you learn to operate, the way that your body and your mind and your heart acclimated to that old situation, old scenario, old scenes that would play out over and over, it's not going to serve in this new space. So it's like your heart is already being called there, spirit is already calling you there, but it's time for you to re-network your brain. Speaking of neuroplasticity, it's time for you to re-network. And maybe that self-love is a huge part of this re-networking. Actually loving, actually seeing, actually valuing and validating yourself to the point where it's not based on anyone else. It's not based on the amount of tension you receive. It's not based on the amount of praise you receive. It's not based on the amount of criticism you receive. It's solid within itself. It's solid within you. And bottom of the deck is the Four of Cups. This is from this self-love space. It's sitting in that, holding all of that love for you, your light, your dark, and your inner child. You as a whole mixture of these three in whatever combination, holding that space until what is for you comes in. Prince of Cups, again, with the Ace of Pentacles. Now that you've learned to walk with spirit, again, it goes back to that Prince of Pentacles energy where you're creating with it. You're holding the light, holding the beacon, holding the way for a new world, one where things are more balanced and more fair, both internally and externally. So that even when it's like even in the shadows, things aren't necessarily working against you. And this temperance, it's more balanced. It's not so heavily weighted in one way rather than the other, but it involves a significant transformation. Not only the death of some things, but also the rebirth of others. It's like it's because like as you're going from Princess of Swords to Queen of Swords to match that Queen of Cups, it's like it's adjusting certain levels within yourself. But for the moment, you just have to trust and follow your heart and go with spirit and relearn again. Bottom of the deck is the Magician. And this is an energy of us primarily focusing on one thing rather than another, or overly utilizing certain tools to the point where we're not as proficient with other tools. And you don't have to be a master of all tools, but you need to know how to use them with the Magician energy. Like that's why the Magician is the Magician, because it knows how to use everything. And then here's this alchemizing energy with Temperance. Again, with Temperance and the Moon, it's like in the past, things were more heavily weighted against us, more heavily weighted in what we don't control. But moving forward, because of this transformation, we're going to be working with spirit, working with the earth, working with the mind and the soul to create what is going to be our experience. It's not a world energy. It may not necessarily be global. This may start as something that you're creating for yourself, and then there will be others who create for themselves. And the more lights and examples there are of people who are creating for themselves, the more people will begin to do it. And then it becomes a world energy instead of a more personalized world with that Ace of Pentacles. Because for some people, seeing is believing. And some people, the luminaries or visionaries, seeing is still believing, but you see first within yourself rather than seeing first outside of yourself. And last, I think that's kind of where I want to leave it, honestly. I don't think this one has to be too long. I'm kind of starting to like this deck more. It's eventually grown on me. I didn't know what I would do with it for a long time. Bottom of the deck, we stop where we started, or we end where we started with that Six of Cups. I just went into all the little details about it, about where you need to be within yourself before you can come and really begin to work with someone else in a similar space in their own. And it's about accepting and acknowledging the space that someone else is in, because you bring your perspective, they bring their perspective, and you create something new together. With this Three of Cups, the Three of Raphael, Three of Cups was on the floor from yesterday. Oh gosh, I noticed it earlier. And then here's the Wheel of Fortune and the Two of Pentacles. This is what's going to begin to shift the balance in the world overall. And that'll really begin to change things. But it takes you holding it within yourself and cooperating in a way with others who hold it within themselves to create something new. Because no one person has everything. And I think that's something that, like, I constantly think of, like, myself. Because, like, I don't believe I necessarily know everything, but I'm fairly confident in my approach. And I do, like, even if I don't agree, like, I always listen. And I'm like, I don't know if, like, that doesn't hold much resonance for me. Or, like, oh, that does hold resonance for me. How do I, like, work that into what I already believe? Does that directly conflict with anything that I believe? And if it does, well, something about this resonates. So I need to find what doesn't fit with whatever I already hold. And it's this continual bettering for me. You know, I got Pluto on my descendants. I got Scorpio in my seventh house. So for me in relationships, that's an energy that's important. Or it's an energy that, I guess, and if I think about it, it's an energy for me that establishes like how close someone comes to me or how close I get with somebody. Like if someone is super fixed and not in a space to grow or expand or evolve, especially if they're rooted in something that I view as antiquated or outdated, it's not going to work. Anything with growth potential for me, like, because I've had friends who, when we met as we were, I was like, this isn't going to work. Like, you're cool at the jump, you're cool for a few miles, but a few more miles under that, I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. But if they express that growth potential, then it's still worth it. And eventually we come into a space where we can understand each other. But I can't be the only one making an attempt at trying to understand somebody. I'm not going to be the only one making an attempt at trying to understand or trying to get a relationship to work, a friendship, whatever. I won't be. I refuse. And I had a friend who, it was like I was growing more and more accommodating to him, but it was just not reciprocated. To the point where, like, when I started to get better, he was like, "Oh, that's annoying," and blah blah blah. I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is over. I'm not doing this. Sorry." I do a lot for a lot of people, and I think a lot of people assume that I'll do even more. But even I have my limits, and especially if that isn't reciprocated, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not interested." Best of luck with life though, and I don't just say it, like, I mean it. Like, I don't want anyone to necessarily be like miserable, even if I don't like them. Um, because there's someone out there for everyone, and just because you weren't for me doesn't mean I have to be like, I don't know, bitter or mean or rude necessarily. I can still be kind of short with people though, so I'm not gonna say that I'm not short with people. And I think that's the Taurus in me. I didn't notice it until a few months ago. Because as my, like, sometimes my grandma will have to go to the store in the morning, and if she's already going to the store, then I go to the store with her. And so she'll have to pick up her medicine. And I was like, "Oh, you ain't have to talk to the bank teller like that, or you ain't have to talk to the lady at the drug counter like that." And she's like, "What do you mean? I'm just talking to." She was like, "I said have a nice day," and it was like, "It's the way you said it." She was like, "But I meant it. Like, have a nice day." I was like, "Oh," but ever since then, I've noticed how I do it myself sometimes, and then I'm like, "Ooh, like." I don't think it sounded how I meant it in the moment. Like, I actually meant it to be like nice or encouraging. Or I remember one time I was in somebody's live and somebody asked a question and I answered it, but I guess I answered it kind of bluntly. And the person who was live, she commented on it. And it was like, "Oh, like, sorry, like, I didn't even mean it that way. I was just answering the question." Maybe like somebody came in and like, "Hey, did you talk about this?" And I was like, "She already talked about it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But I was like, "I didn't mean it that way. I just meant like, if you go back, you'll find it." And I only bring that up because it happened a few days ago and someone else's live. I guess that's something that I've been experimenting with lately. I kind of stopped for a minute because I had, honestly, a not great experience with communities on YouTube. And I'm not really the type of person that seeks out drama or discord. And so if I find it, I just kind of sort of leave typically. Um, But it was cool. It's like I was engaging. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is fun." And then like I somehow ended up in like other people's drama at first, and I'm like, "Oh." And then like somebody like brought me into it. I'm like, "Hey, like," and I think since like I'm typically a fairly like light-ish, not too whatever, or I used to be until the happening of June 2020. Um that people maybe assume like I wouldn't speak up or whatever, that like they can just do whatever and I'd be cool with it. And I was like, no, like, I'm not saying that this is who you are and how you are, but from my perspective, this is what I'm observing, and I don't appreciate you trying to bring me into it. Because whatever y'all got, that's between y'all. That ain't on me. Don't bring me into it, and don't try to use me and as some kind of piece to play whatever game you playing because I'm not interested. And from there, it was just like one community after the other that I found on here. It's just like not great. Why is there so much beef? Like, I'm not necessarily vegetarian, but I'm not interested. And so, but community, I don't know if it's my Saturn return in the 11th house, if it's the Aquarius stellium that's happening in my 11th house or what, but even before the stellium and before all that, I've been feeling for a minute now that community is something that I'm gravitating more towards. And maybe it's for me to create more so than just to like try to find. Um, because I guess no community is perfect, but in most of the ones I've found, it's just like not fully it. Now I'm like, well, maybe it's not a spiritual community. Maybe it's more like a work community. Because there was an iPrep program at a company. It's an international, fairly intensive, like get in on the company, work at different branches on different projects. And it made me really excited. And maybe it's more like professional. Maybe I'll do more professional communities or I'll join a board or something like that. And it won't be necessarily a spiritual community. From a lot of what I've seen in the spiritual community, I don't, it's like there are people that I have interest in like forming a relationship with, but the people around them or the people who engage with them, I'm not necessarily interested in being like one of those. I don't know. It's quite weird, but I won't. I'll do my best. Not do my best because again, going back to the Princess of Swords for something like this. Honestly, it's new to me. Before 2019, I would never even be in a space really to try to do something like this. I've never really sought out a community. I've always just been in the community that I found myself in. Like if I was working, it was my coworkers, or if I was at school, it was my classmates. But those would only stand like in school, in class, or at work. Um, for whatever reason, I'm not really, or I wasn't really the type of person that would like mix. So like my work people would stay my friends at work. My school people would stay my friends at school. My home people would stay my friends at home. The church people would be my church people. And like if there were friends, like I didn't necessarily dedicate too much time or energy or effort into hanging out with my school friends outside of school because like they're my school friends. I see when I'm at school and we have fun. Now there were a few people, specifically one really, who like we would like talk on the phone. Well, a few, very few people who like we would talk outside of school or do things outside of school. Um, but I don't know. In my brain, it's just like that's how I separate relationships, I guess. Uh, so like even if I have a friend who I might be interested in my mind, it's like I have to have that conversation because if I don't, then in my brain, that's not going to be anything that's ever more than friends. It's just like, oh, I never saw you that way. Like friends are what we are, right? That's like what it is. And there have been people who've like navigated from like, outer circle to inner circle, but there's always, I don't know. It takes me a while typically, or it used to take me a while to like really not open up to people, but to allow people to sort of like bleed out of the area that I met them in and into other areas. Because I remember I was talking to my mom last year, and she was like, she always talked about how hard it is to be my friend. And the more I've lived life, especially recently, I agree. I don't think I'm necessarily an easy person. Like I'm not a difficult person to be friends with, but like I'm not interested in small-minded, stuck people. And like if we're friends and if I have to constantly listen to you say something that's like some kind of phobic or some kind of ist, I'm like, I'm not interested. I don't want to have to continue to hear this. And it's like I can like be around people that I don't agree with, but for me, like there are certain things that it's like not up for debate, right? Like we can have differences of opinion, but if your opinion is that a certain class of people deserve to be treated like absolute garbage, like that's not something that, like, to me that's not a difference of opinion. It's not, because that affects someone's like real life. And if like people can lose their lives, or if people can have their existences threatened because of your viewpoints, then I don't feel that that's something that I have to overlook. It's like, I don't know, I'm not interested. Um, and so in that way, I can probably be a little difficult to be friends with because I require a certain amount of decency from the people that I consider to be my friends. And if I don't find that decency, I'm not interested. I don't know why I'm talking about this. I don't know how I started talking about this. Maybe it's something I need to talk about. I get off my chest. Oh, I don't know, because I'm thinking like maybe the community is going to be more work based rather than like spiritual. And I was talking about how I haven't had great interactions with um, communities of spiritual people, like one-on-one interactions with spiritual people, like through comments and stuff like that. Yeah, even through like emails or messages or whatever. Like I've had some amazing experiences with individuals, but whenever like larger groups of people come in, it seems that for whatever reason, maybe it was the circles I was running before, but it would like fall to drama or whatever. And I'm just like, I'm not interested in this. Like if I'm on spiritual YouTube, I'm here to get some kind of learning, some kind of evolution, or to have like interesting discussions. I'm not here for drama or competition or I don't, that's not what I'm here for. Some people like a little bit of tea wherever they go. I'm like, I like some tea in the tea room, like when it's tea time, sure. But like that's that again, that's that like that separation for me. I don't know. I think I'm weird that way though. And I can't even be like, that's my blank and blah blah blah. Cause I don't know. And I don't have anything in Virgo. My sixth house is really huge. And I say Virgo because I view Virgo as an energy that's able to compartmentalize things. Um, and it's a compartmentalization for me. And it's like, everything has to be in its space and in its place. Can be. Um, so I guess because I have Virgo, not Virgo, I have Libra intercepted. And so I have Virgo on my sixth house. And then my sixth house ends in Scorpio. So all of Libra is in my sixth house. So that's a lot of Virgo ruling energy. Just like my 12th house, it's cusp in Pisces, but my rising, my first house, is cusp in Taurus. So I have all of Aries in my 12th house. So it's huge. Um, but that's just something that, like in dreams and in feelings, it's something that I've been feeling, something that's been coming to my mind a lot lately. For a minute, before everything really started popping in Aquarius. Um, and so I know too that it's something that's like, and maybe that's why I was talking about everything that I was talking about, because there were a lot of things within me that I wasn't handling and dealing with for a long time that influenced and impacted my ability to be a part of community, or why I would choose to just isolate and separate myself rather than try to find one. But I don't know. Excuse me, maybe something is continuously coming up for you or something is in the back of your mind right now. And whenever that happens for me, whenever I come upon a new chapter, I try to make sure that I'm prepared for it or that I'm ready for it. And not necessarily in a space of preparation, but like, is this something that makes sense for me? Is this something that I'm capable of doing? Especially when I was holding on to all the baggage that I was holding on to. Um, And if it's something that I know that I'm not going to be able to engage with in a healthy way, then why would I do that? Like there was one friend I had and we used to argue like all the time. And there were like cultural differences, but beyond cultural differences on his part was a lack of like trying to learn or understand me as me. And I was like, if you can't do that, this isn't gonna work. Because I'm special in a lot of ways. I'm not necessarily your typical person. I get upset by things that don't necessarily upset a lot of people, and I'm not upset by some things that upset a lot of people. But if you're going to be the person that like if you're going to be the type of person that continuously upsets me without trying to learn or whatever, then like I'm not interested because I'm not interested in being always upset. Like, why would I do that to myself? Hello? No, no, thank you. Um, and again, like our friendship worked because he actually listened, and now we've learned each other enough to know. And is he the type of butthead that'll be like who will intentionally upset me? Yeah, still. And then he'll be like, "Oh, like you need to blah blah blah," and I'm like, "If you," and did he call? He didn't call me crazy, but I was like, "What's crazy in my mind is like you doing things to intentionally upset me, and then I get upset, and you're like, whoa, like what's happening? Like, so which one of us is really crazy? It's you." He was, I don't know, he just like I guess it's also his thing to like mess with people, not necessarily in a malicious way, but in like a fun, like poke fun way. I don't. I'm not that type of person. Like I don't upset people for funsies or because I want to have a little play argument or something. I don't know. That ain't me. It ain't never been me. Like I just like having a good time. And if we could be at peace, let's just be at peace. Not to say that I'm incapable of handling confrontation, but I ain't gonna be fighting and arguing with somebody just for fighting and arguing with somebody. Like that don't like no. Why would I do that? Hello. I'd rather not. So anyway, I don't know what this turned into at the second half. Maybe something I said. Maybe I just needed to vent. Who knows? But that's where I'm gonna end this today. Also, those are some of the things that I've grown to learn about myself, and I've had the opportunity to improve on them, or to be more patient, to be more understanding, or to try to be more cognizant and mindful in the moment that it's like you can tell when something is done to upset you intentionally and when it's not. And if it's not done to intentionally upset me, I can have a little bit more patience in that moment. Or I can have a conversation about why I was upset. And that one friend completely changed the way that I viewed like all of my relationship dynamics, what, 2018? Because before that friend, I would just be done with people. It's like I would reach my breaking point. I would reach the point where I realized, okay, so in this relationship, you're going to be the type of person who constantly irritates or annoys or frustrates me or makes me upset because you get off on it in some kind of way, or because you're having a bad day somewhere else, you want to try to come in and ruin my day. And I'm not interested in friends like that. Like, do I know that like not every day is gonna be great? Yeah. Can I sit there through a not great day? Yeah. But am I gonna sit here and let you beat up on me and because you're having a bad day? No, absolutely not. Not gonna happen. And so I would just be done with people forever. And for me to go like we literally met when I was in the darkest point of my life. And he was there through it and patient and understanding through it. He taught me what patience is when it comes to people. And he taught me that there are also people who are worth being patient for. And that sometimes, you can see someone through their difficulty because we're more than our darkness. So after that, it changed everything for me. So now I have these new tools, and they're not necessarily new tools. It's just things that I never had the patience to learn to use before, going back to the magician and that temperance and the moon energies. Um, And so it's just a lot of growth for me to keep in mind as I enter the world, because we don't live in a bubble. And I've been feeling it as community, but it doesn't have to be community specifically. It could be the people I work with. It can be like if I have to commute, the people I commute with. Like there are so many different communities. And for me, it's about being a participant in those and not being the person who's always self isolating and not really getting to know anybody, because that's not who I am. It's never really been who I am. It's who I became because of traumas. But now that I've worked through those traumas, it's about me almost like remembering who I was before and learning to be that way again. And not learning to be that way and being exactly the way I was before, but just learning to live more openly and more connectedly, because connection is going to be ever present in my life. And I've had some pretty great teachers through some good means, through some not that great means, and through some good and also challenging means, and I appreciate them all. So, yeah, that's what life is calling me to do and look at, I guess. That's some of my history, some of the way I've been working through it, or whatever. Maybe, I don't know. Sometimes I talk about stuff and it's like maybe my thought process or maybe the way I talk through how I work through things will benefit somebody in some area or aspect in their life. Because besides that, I don't really know why I'm talking about this right now. Like I've like talked about this. Like this is something that I've already worked through, so I don't necessarily think I'm like working through it in this medium for myself. I don't know. If you find something in here that is helpful, I'm glad, because otherwise, I don't know what I'm talking about. Also, I don't need to know why I say the things that I know. That's something that I've also found out. So I hope you have a good whatever whenever you see this, and I hope you're acting in alignment to make that which you wish to experience your reality. I hope you are stepping up to the plate in all areas that life is asking you to step up to the plate in, because for those who are practicing in this preseason, it's going to make the actual game a lot more fun, I feel like, because it's almost like you can work through the difficulties now. Again, so much of the reading or so many of the cards we're talking about acclimatizing and acclimating to something before you're even in there, so that when you are there, it's easier. It's like, oh, wow, I can do this. Yeah. So that's what I got, you know. I'll catch y'all later. Bye.